Her cue system was a cheap ankle bracelet that buzzed commands into her skin, and on the biggest night of her life, it started stuttering. At 19, Elara Nkomo tuned subway rails in Valparaíso by touch, living on a flood-bitten block where salt stains climbed the walls like maps. Every winter, water shoved through doorframes and taught her that balance is built where ground keeps disappearing. She was deaf, but not disconnected, because the city still spoke to her through rattling metal, shivering windows, and the drum of trains. At dawn, she climbed the bridge above the harbor and pressed both palms against steel cables humming with bass. For months, she read tremors like braille written by the wind, turning each vibration into counts her body could trust. Back in her room, she sketched choreography in thick chalk arrows across cracked concrete, then covered them with tape beneath her ballet shoes. She could not hear the beat, so she built a map her feet could feel, learning each turn by pressure, angle, and grit. The invitation arrived like lightning in a blackout, calling a deaf subway tuner from a wet hillside neighborhood to a global awards stage in Dubai. The stage was a glowing sheet of glass wrapped in holograms, with thousands watching live and millions more behind screens. Producers loaded every cue into her vibrating ankle bracelet, a slim band meant to replace the music she would never hear. It was brilliant in theory until rehearsals revealed failures, with pulses arriving late, disappearing entirely, or stacking into nonsense against her skin. Then the LED floor count dropped out during a technical run, erasing the visual markers she had memorized and leaving her inside blank white glare. Most performers would have asked for a delay, a backup track, or mercy from the schedule, but Elara started redesigning the problem. She divided the dance into physical anchors instead of musical counts, attaching every phrase to a breath pattern, muscle contraction, and landmark on the floor. She practiced one section until her left wrist pulse became the cue for a fall, then another until her jaw relaxed exactly before a turn. She stood barefoot in puddles after rain and felt buses passing 3 streets away, teaching her nervous system to notice subtler information. She drilled the choreography under bridge cables, on subway platforms, and beside rattling flood pipes, building consistency in places built for distraction. When the bracelet glitched, she refused panic and wrote tiny rescue rules in a notebook, each one simple enough to obey under pressure. If a pulse vanished, she would trust the previous momentum for 4 breaths before checking the floor. If the floor went blank, she would aim for texture changes beneath her soles, moving from smooth panel to taped seam like stepping stones. If holograms swallowed her sightline, she would return to the strongest, reliable metronome she had left, the blood hammering through her own wrists. Night after night, she rehearsed with the bracelet deliberately sabotaged, training for failure until failure stopped feeling like an ambush. Her apartment ceiling leaked into buckets beside her practice space, yet she spun between them as if the world stage had already arrived. Neighbors watched from doorways, while floodwater reflected her legs in broken silver, and every improvised session sharpened her stubborn, practical grace. She learned that confidence is not the feeling that everything will work, but the memory that you have survived when it did not. By the time she reached Dubai, the arena looked unreal, a galaxy trapped indoors, with holograms floating like electric weather above the glass floor. Stylists wrapped her in a costume that caught light along the seams, making her body look cut from midnight and sunrise together. Underneath the silken shimmer sat the same stubborn ankle bracelet, now polished, expensive-looking, and still capable of betraying her. In the wings, stagehands rushed past with tablets and headsets, while Elara stood still enough to feel her pulse settle into useful information. She pressed 2 fingers to her wrist, not for comfort, but to calibrate the backup rhythm she had trained into muscle and bone. The opening pulse hit her ankle correctly, then the second came weak, then nothing, like a lighthouse blinking once before fog swallowed it. She stepped onto the glass anyway, her silhouette rising inside a rain of holographic shards that made the arena look submerged in light. Her first sequence depended on 3 bracelet cues, but after the first phrase, the timing slipped, and the 4th buzz arrived almost half a beat late. Instead of freezing, she released into the breath pattern she had carved into rehearsal, exhaling on the fold and letting momentum carry the recovery. Then the LED count beneath the glass vanished completely, wiping away the glowing numbers that were supposed to guide her across the stage. For one dangerous second, she danced inside pure brightness with no visible map, no audible music, and no guarantee she stood where she thought. Her taped shoes found a faint seam under the floor panel, and that tiny line became a road through the whiteout. She crossed into the next phrase by texture, not by sight, drawing angles from memory and pressing each landing into the stage like a promise. The holograms thickened into a storm around her, turning her body into a dark ember floating through artificial lightning and smoke. Mid-act, a deep bass effect shook the stage, and Elara caught it not with her ears but through the glass, her calves, and the bones of her spine. The vibration fed directly into the training she had done on bridge cables at dawn, and her body recognized home inside the foreign arena. She launched into the hardest section, carving chalk arrow pathways she had memorized months earlier, now invisible but alive beneath taped muscle memory. Every turn came from an internal checklist she had built in hardship. Breath low, shoulders quiet, wrist pulse steady, eyes soft, feet honest. Then came the final spin, the one requiring perfect timing for the floor sensors to translate her movement into a live visual burst. The bracelet flickered uselessly at her ankle, so Elara ignored it completely and counted the spin from the surge in her own bloodstream. She turned once, twice, 3 times, and on the last razor-thin moment, her heartbeat aligned with the glass under her feet. The entire floor flashed crimson gold and sent her pulse rippling across the arena ceiling, blooming outward like a sunrise no one expected. Suddenly the audience was on its feet, and though she heard none of it, she saw faces break open with shock, then awe, then something deeper. Applause became visible in waves of bodies, mouths, tears, and light bouncing off raised hands, but Elara read it through her wrists first. Her pulse was sprinting, strong and undeniable, and she realized she had spent years learning that inner signal was not second best. Back home, kids from her block later traced chalk arrows on dry pavement, copying the strange training method that turned uncertainty into something navigable. Subway workers started tapping rhythms on railings so she could feel messages faster, and her neighborhood began seeing accessibility as design, not pity. Her success did not erase the floods, the leaks, or the glitches, but it changed how problems entered the room. She had shown that when one channel fails, you do not wait to be rescued by perfect conditions. You build alternate routes before the crisis using whatever your environment already offers, whether that is texture, breath, timing, or habit. You rehearse your backup plan until it feels boring, because panic hates familiarity and usually leaves when the body knows where to go. You stop asking whether your limitation looks impressive to other people and start asking what information still remains available right now. Elara's greatest trick was not dancing without hearing, but turning every overlooked signal into a usable instruction for motion. That is the part worth stealing, because your breakthrough may be hiding inside the feedback you keep dismissing as too small. Feel the floor, map the seam, trust the pulse you can prove, then step forward so fully that even the light has to learn your rhythm.